The Czech capital, beautiful Prague. So let's check out this country called the Czech Republic, which broke away from its other half, Slovakia, as a result of public referenda in 1993. This is the story of the Czech lands. From the earliest settlement by ancient Celts through subsequent occupations by Germanic and Slav tribes and then intrusions by Austrians, Germans and finally Russians, to the November 1989 Velvet Revolution that shattered communism, the history of the Czech lands, and specifically the region that is now known to the world as the Czech Republic, is an amazing and colourful adventure story. It began with the arrival of the Boii tribe, from whose name is derived the term Bohemia. This group of ancient Celtic settlers were the first Bohemians, and the term still applies to regions to the east, west, north and south of the magnificent city of Prague. A capital which for more than 600 years has had its wonderful architecture largely left unscathed by war or natural disaster, despite the drama occurring within it. But let's go back. By the 4th century AD, the Celts had been driven out of the Bohemian basin by Germanic tribes. Then the Western Slavs arrived, and they took control of the Czech lands. That brings us to somewhere around the 7th century when their leader, a Czech prince called Krok, decided to take his people from the plains of the river Labe, or Elbe, to the high castle Vyšehrad. Prince Krok's youngest daughter, Libusha, was regarded as having the gift of prophecy, as she duly declared work should commence on, quote, a city whose glory will one day touch the stars, unquote. Could she really have seen the city of 100 spires? Libusha then came across a common ploughman called Przemysl and invited him to start the Przemyslid dynasty, which through thick and thin survived as the ruling force in Bohemia through to the 14th century. Prince Bočevoj became the first Christian ruler of Prague after being baptized during the 9th century crusade by Cyril and Methodius, two Slav apostles from Greece. During the 9th century, the Slav tribes adopted Christianity and formed the Great Moravian Empire. Prince Bočevoj's grandson, Prince Václav, was taught Christianity by his grandmother. Václav became such a good duke, a title he held from the age of 13, we know him today as the good King Wenceslas, the patron saint of the Czechs. The last ruler from this mighty dynasty was King Ottokar II, who failed to get the blessing from Rome to add the title Holy Roman Emperor to his CV. Thus in 1310, John of Luxembourg married into the Bohemian throne and also married the Czech kingdom to the German Empire. In 1346, his son, the much revered Charles IV, succeeded him as King of the Germans. Charles had strong cultural and political connections. He'd been brought up in the French court and had powerful friends stretching right up to the Pope. This medieval networking paid off, and in 1355 this powerful Bohemian king became Holy Roman Emperor. Under his rule, trade and culture flourished, and Prague entered its golden age, becoming one of the most important centres of 14th century Europe. In 1348 he had founded the Charles University. In 1357 he commissioned the German court architect Peter Parler to begin work on the Charles Bridge over the Vltava River, immortalized by Smetana in his symphonic work Má Vlast, or My Country. A statue of the Counter-Reformation saint St. John of Nepomuk marks where he was thrown from the bridge in the late 14th century. A cluster of stars is said to have appeared over the spot where he drowned. In the castle area are other insights into Czech history, such as Golden Lane, with its row of tiny two-story apartments which housed the castle guards in the 1500s and was named after the goldsmiths who lived here in the 17th century. Inside the Old Palace is a room where on the 23rd of May 1618 two Catholic Habsburg councillors were hurled through a window by a group of Protestant nobles upset over religious intolerance. The attempt to provide them with a different view was thwarted by their soft landing in a medieval dung heap. but the incident still managed to spark off the 30 Years' War between the Hussites and the Catholics. Up the hill from the castle along romantic cobblestone roads and through magnificent arcades is the Strahov Monastery, dating back to the 12th century. Nearby is the beautiful Loreto, built in 1626 in honour of the legend of Santa Casa in the Italian city of Loreto. Inside St George's Basilica is a well-preserved Romanesque church. It contains the tomb of Bohemia's first Christian martyr, Ludmilla, who was strangled on the orders of her jealous daughter-in-law. The Little Venice area alongside Camper Island. On the other side of the river, it's a blend of the very old and the more recent history of Prague. In the wonderful Old Town Square, the visitor marvels at such sights as the Baroque St Nicholas Church, as the former Hussite Church, Our Lady Before Tin, and the square's centrepiece, the astronomical clock on the face of the Old Town Hall. The clock dates from 1490, when it's said the master clockmaker Hannes, who built it, was blinded so that he couldn't repeat his masterpiece. Hourly, the 12 apostles revolved through opened windows above this timeless piece of craftsmanship. Another landmark nearby is the elegant Estates Theatre, built in 1783, and where 4 years later the opera Don Giovanni debuted, with Mozart himself at the piano conducting the orchestra. Around another corner is the wide boulevard known as Wenceslas Square, the scene of dramatic 20th century events, including the tragic self-immolation of student protester Jan Palach in the late 60s. This is one of the many treasures of Central Europe, the State Opera House in Prague. It was built in 1888. It was originally the new German theatre, but now, of course, it has that wonderful atmosphere of the great composers, their wonderful works, and more than that, the great performances here.